Today I'm going to talk about understanding your boundaries. There's a fine line between wanting to make sure that other people are comfortable versus always putting yourself last. Manners and etiquette towards yourself. Let's say, for instance, that you have a project deadline that's fast approaching, and this is also around the holiday season, and someone has asked you if you would help out in planning the event. Now, you know that you should say no because you've got this other project that's requiring more of your time, but you're just not sure or not really comfortable saying no because you're afraid of how it'll make you look. You don't want to come off as being rude. So, how do you handle a situation like this? Well, let me give you 3 basic tips for dealing with boundaries and understanding your own boundaries. First, be direct. There's nothing worse than beating around the bush. It's already complicated enough to just say no. You only add more complexity to the situation if you start beating around the bush instead of being direct. For instance, if somebody did come to you at work with the task or with the project of planning this holiday party at the same time that you've got your own project to be working on, and your response to that request was to say, oh, well, I don't know how to do that. And maybe you're being playful in your response even because you want to soften the harshness of this rude response of saying no. You want to just be playful and amicable in your response. So you're like, hey, I don't even know how to do that. But you know what that does? That actually invites the person to retort with some other comment like, oh, it's easy, it's no big deal. Oh, it's really easy. Oh, you can get it done really quick. Oh, this is totally something that you can do at the same time. So you see what happened there? Instead of just saying no, sorry, you said, oh, I don't know how to do that. I could never pull off something like that. This person is now thinking that maybe you're being humble or maybe you're not giving yourself enough credit or whatever it is. In that kind of a situation, you're actually not helping anyone. I mean, the situation is a no-win situation if you can't be direct about your response. Now, number 2, let's say that you did want to add the few extra statements to kind of soften the blow of saying no. Well, why don't you just couple it with a positive? You could say something like, no, I just can't add that to my plate right now, but I'm really glad that you thought about me for this situation, or I'm really glad that you thought about me for this project. That way, it kind of gives you a little bit more of assurance that you're not being rude, that you're being amicable, that you're being collegial with your colleagues, or whatever you want to call it. If that makes you feel better, fine. Couple your no's with a positive statement or acclamation. Now, thirdly, give yourself some time. You're tired of always saying yes, or you're tired of always saying no. Maybe you do implement this little trick here where you say no and then give a positive statement or positive acclamation. But maybe you're realizing that you're kind of just doing this rotely. You're kind of just saying yes or no rotely. Why not give yourself some time? If somebody is expecting a response from you or whatever the scenario is, give yourself some time. I know that this is especially applicable when we're talking about introverts versus extroverts. A lot of the times, extroverts in a meeting or a gathering or some social event or some professional event will more easily be able to feed off of others' energy in active, real time. They might be able to answer to a response in the moment without having to really analyze it in their mind because that's the way they derive their energy source. Whereas with introverts, a lot of the time, introverts need to take time away to really think and analyze something. There's too much stimulus in an environment, in the middle of a meeting when everybody's looking towards that introvert to kind of give a response about whatever the inquiry was or whatever the decision is that needs to be made. A lot of the times, introverts are more comfortable making a decision after they've had a chance to either go away and come back or to have some time to really reflect in one way or the other. I know it really helps me deal with it the next morning. Maybe there's a time of day that works better for you. Maybe your energy starts to wane by the end of the day, towards the end of the week. And so when you get a specific request, it could be overwhelming for you. It could be the one thing that kind of sends you over. And you don't want to come to a situation where you start to feel burnt out. You can always just set things aside, delay the response until you're ready to give an adequate, effective, productive response. And you can even mention that to whoever the requester is so that they can understand, or they will know that you've acknowledged their request, and at the same time you find that their request is important enough that you want to go away and think about it for a little bit. But let's say the request is being made in person, on the spot. You can even ask for time, on the spot. If somebody is like, hey, can you plan this party for the holiday thing? You can say, give me a moment to think about that, and then maybe count to 10 in your mind. And when you're ready, give a response. That way you can actually think in your mind about the pros and cons about a given situation. I know I implement that process very often because I can easily get overworked and overstimulated. Even my close family members will constantly want to ask me advice about things that they're trying to implement in their own lives. And sometimes I have to tell them, hey, I think that's something you have to figure out for yourself. Or I even will say, that's not something I can help you with right now. Or they're going to ask me to proofread a post before they post it on social media, or they want my opinion about some project that they're working on. Sometimes I just have to say, no, not right now. And I will often get the retort, or from time to time get the response, hey, it'll only take 2 seconds. Oh, it'll only take 10 seconds. Like, why won't you just help me? And I will find myself having to explain from time to time, listen, I know it would take you 10 seconds because this is something that either you do regularly or that you're more comfortable with, or this is something that you're more comfortable with. But for someone like me, this actually takes a lot of thought and analysis and a lot of energy, and that's just something I can't devote time and energy to at this moment. Usually something like that. So you don't want to beat around the bush. You do want to be direct. You can couple a positive statement with the no if that makes you feel better. And lastly, you want to be able to take the time that you need. That way you can better ensure that everybody wins. If you're going to just say yes to a situation or say no to a situation without actually giving thought as to whether this is a conducive situation, a project, a task, whatever the request is, if you're just kind of nonchalantly giving a response without actually measuring the impact or the consequence or the time, the energy, without counting the cost ahead of time, that can actually be detrimental, and that will only make the situation worse. And then you'll leave regretting having committed to this task or project, or later down the line the stress will build up and you'll just really regret that you ever said yes. And you might even feel a little bit of bitterness towards the requester or whatever it is. But just remember those 3 things. You always want to be respectful. You always want to understand your own boundaries and be truthful. Be honest with yourself. Honesty is important. And when you're saying no, you're being honest. Anyone should be able to respect the fact that you're being honest. To be honest is showing others that you respect them. And to be honest is showing yourself that you respect yourself.